Today's episode is brought to you by Surfshark. Now, this video is not available in your location. Does that sound familiar? If it does, let me tell you why a VPN could be the solution to all your problems. Because a VPN doesn't only increase online privacy, which you need, trust me on that one, it also helps you avoid hackers and helps you access entertainment because the content you see is limited to your geographic location. But if you use a VPN, you can change your virtual location and forget about restrictions and censorship. So if you can't wait to watch Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus or any streaming platform, you can unlock new libraries with a VPN. And if you can't watch a YouTube video in your region, connect to a different location with a VPN. Can't access certain websites or apps through a school or office network? Again, try a VPN. So get Surfshark VPN at surfshark.deals/TTD. That's surfshark.deals/TTD. Enter the promo code TTD for 83% off and 3 months free. But now, on with today's show. I have a cracker of a guest lined up for you today, and before we started recording, I found myself fascinated by all the gadgets and gizmos he had behind him, from old retro phones to typewriters made of Lego, and we could have chatted for hours about life, the universe and everything, but we did have a podcast to record, so I had to rein in my curiosity somewhat. And his name is Andrew Aman. And since co-founding 923 Digital Ventures back in 2012, he has helped launch countless ventures for clients and emerging companies and been able to turn his business into one of the fastest growing private companies in the US on the Inc. 5000 list. And he also classes himself as an experienced intrapreneur and entrepreneur, and is responsible for patents for nuclear submarine components and 3 supply chain innovations, and launched an incredible 12 startups. So I want to learn more about all this and how he excels at bootstrapping startups without the involvement of venture capital. We got so much to talk about, and he's a great guy. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Boston so you can join me and Andrew in conversation right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So thank you for having me, Neil. My name is Andrew Aman, and I'm the founder and CEO of 923 Digital. We're a venture studio where for the last 10 years, we built mobile and web apps from inception to launch. I like to think that clients find us at the point when their products are good and they're prepared to make it great. So what we really focus on is trying to make an exceptional partner by providing insights and knowledge. And we've done this in so many industries now. We have about 40 applications in many industries. And we've worked together as a team for a long time. So what we're really good at processes and procedures. And at the end of the day, we strive to make our clients remarkable in their business. Something that people really want to talk about. Personally, after college, I graduated college in 2008, and I became a nuclear submarine engineer. I worked both on the Ohio class and the Los Angeles class for the United States Navy. And my job was working on the hovering pump. The hovering pump is what keeps the submarine in one place when you deep dive. And I also work on the aft end of the submarine for future designs. As a mechanical engineer, I pretty much discovered the power of being both an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur. So when I moved back to really my hometown, I moved back with my wife, my now wife, and I developed a process for supply chain that ended up being patented as the first Bluetooth tracking device in manufacturing. And that's really being an intrapreneur and trying to make the company look good. And as an entrepreneur, at the same exact time I was doing that, I had met my co-founder, Pavel, and the two of us were building Inigo, which is the beginning of 923 Digital Studio. And so the lessons I learned in those years is basically, how to build a company, how to manage, people. And the result of that is we're now one of the fastest growing companies in America.
Wow, there is just so much to unpack there. I mean, you've not just the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, but responsible for patents for nuclear submarine components, 3 supply chain innovations that have also successfully, I think you've also successfully launched 12 startups. But I've got to ask, where did your passion for technology come from? What was it that lit that spark? Maybe you could tell the listeners a little bit more about that moment that put you on the path that you're on today. I've got a feeling there's got to be a big origin story here.
Of course, yeah. I think technology was always an integral part of my childhood, along with engineering. Some of my fondest memories was building with Legos and Connects. As we started this call, Neil, you noticed my typewriter on the back built out of Legos, and it's an integral part of my life. I love the concept of taking pieces or parts, putting them together, and making a product out of it, making it something that people can look at and understand that there's functionality behind it, and there's thought processes that go into it. But what I think, now that I have kids myself, I realize that it comes from parenting. You really have to teach your kids the scientific method. And I think my dad taught me that. It allows kids and students to really hypothesize about, pretty much anything. What can exist? How does it exist? How does it work? And if you apply that scientific method and your parents kind of encourage you to apply that scientific method, you could be out in the yard making anything, and you're testing, you're experimenting, you're understanding, and you're failing. And the more you do that, I think that's what has transitioned me from being an engineer to from being just a student to really being an engineer. And over time, what I think is fascinating is that mechanical engineer coming from to software, it's an easier transition because you understand how stuff moves. But I was really chasing where the products were going. In 2012, mobile applications were all the rage, and people were trying to get apps from basically products from websites to mobile apps. And just that process was fascinating. So transitioning from mechanical to really software was easy for me when I was focused on the mobile application side of things.
And of course, it was that path that would eventually lead you to 923 Digital Ventures. And yes, I'm conscious there will be a lot of people listening just hearing about that for the very first time. So can you tell me a little bit more about it and how you've launched countless ventures for clients and emerging companies? Because there's a big list there, isn't there?
Yes. So we are at its core an agency, and we have 50 engineers, quality engineers, project managers. We have a solid team that's worked with us now for the last 4 or 5 years. And over time, it's built up from basically one product to multiple products. We've always been core at creating our own startups. But the agency itself, what we realized in 2019 is that we were never going to be a great agency without great procedures. So at that time, we started writing how our clients come to us. We use full transparency development, which allows our clients to really understand what our team is talking about and communicating, and we become a partner. But the ability for us to launch countless ventures really stems from the idea that, my business partner gets frustrated, but I come up with about 200 ideas a year, and about 199 of them are really bad. But some of them, every once in a while, we continue to talk about. And when you run an agency, the problem is you always have sunk cost. When a developer is working on something and he's finishing the task or the client project, he needs to move on to the next thing. And if you don't have that next client project lined up, you have this gap. And so as the engineers are viewing that gap, they're trying to figure out what to do and kind of what can they do with their work? What can they do with their skills? So creating those startups allows us to give them an opportunity to test and experiment. And like I said, really focus on the scientific method. And those startups now, we've had a few iterations of how we built those startups. But you're taking basically what I call sunk cost and making an opportunity cost. You're making value for the future. And the startups, when we started, we were like, all right, great. I can run an agency and I can run 4 startups at the same time. And you can tell that that's just a recipe for disaster. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the resources. And so being the leader of the startup was not going to work. So our next cohort, we started hiring individuals, CEOs, project managers. We started trying to launch a product and attaching a industry leader to that product that we would find. And that's worked relatively well towards the later end. The first few haven't really taken off, but the last 2 have. And so now what we've really done with our startups and what we're launching is we look for an industry expert that is interested in building a product. So we're not coming up with the idea. And so our last 3 ventures have really been somebody else's idea, somebody else's marketing, and we're the product builders. So as you can tell, it's evolved over time. But that process, we've started to get really good at creating this flywheel of developing products and understanding it. And I can talk about the flywheel too, because that's an interesting aspect. If you want me to go into it,
yeah, no, please do. Yeah, tell me about that flywheel.
Sure. So as I was saying, in 2019, we started writing procedures, and I started to realize the value of really putting stuff on paper so that people can become aware of what we're trying to do as a company. And I created this flywheel, and it has 5 steps to the flywheel. And you would think, oh, that's really easy. It would take a few seconds to look at and understand. But it's taking us almost 2 years to adjust it, modify it, and really buy into it. And I'm still not totally convinced. But the concept is the top of the flywheel is we research and find clients for the agency. So that's the beginning of any agency, is trying to find somebody to work with you. And then we build products as an agency for those clients. So just like any agency, that's a one-to-one relationship you build, and you can loop there all day long and have a successful business. But what we do is we take the profits from that agency, from those clients, and we then we're generating profit for the company. So that's the third part of the flywheel. And then the next step is we find and acquire partners for a specific industry. So at that point, we're taking our profits and the people we find, and we're creating the last part of the flywheel, which is building startups. And that's the byproduct of profits and partners. And then what's great about the flywheel is it loops all the way back around to the top, because as we build the startups, the people that we're building it for ask us for client work. And it comes all the way back to the beginning where we say, great, we have an agency that can do the client work. And so that flywheel allows us to continue this momentum as we build the startups and gives us a reason to build those startups.
Wow, that's incredibly cool. And I'm curious, though, from navigating the startup world by building a digital venture studio versus a traditionally backed VC model startup, what kind of lessons have you learned there? And are there any insights you could share around that too?
Yeah, sure. I think Greg Eisenberg said it best when he said, you can think of studio model as a powerful de-risking machine. And what I think he means by that is you can take a bunch of shots on net while performing the lean test build, methodology of just cycling through ideas. And you're trying to figure out what sticks and what works. So a really seasoned studio can become experts at rapidly generating and testing ideas and moving from one product to the next. Because each build is really similar to the previous. Once you get built, like every login screen, every app has a login screen. Every product has a forgot password. Right. And you get good at building those steps and those product screens. And what gets interesting is as you get deeper into our startups, the cost of those shots are decreasing because you're doing the rapid succession of one product to the next. So when we search for product market fit, we're both decreasing the time it takes to go from inception to finding our first customer, or really to find product market fit. And what's great is the cost is reducing as well. It's not like it's taking more money to find product market fit. What happens with a VC-backed model is you're putting all your chips in one bet, and you're hoping for a new entrepreneur to find the right product at the right time with the right market, and you're betting on the fact that this entrepreneur can achieve that. I think one of the best is Jim Collins says there's firing bullets and firing cannonballs. Right. And VC-backed companies seem to fire a lot of bullets, and they use debt to fire those bullets. And it takes a lot of time. And then finally, you can find product market fit and fire that cannonball. But I think the VC-backed model is really hoping that you're doing that. And it's like growth at all costs. And as an entrepreneur, I think you do have a choice. You can choose your kind of exit strategy and your goal. And if you choose that VC backing, you really got to understand that you're going to use debt for growth. As opposed to where a venture studio is using the profits that they're making in the agency and taking those profits and really trying to create sustainable and lasting businesses.
And when I was researching you before you came on the podcast, another thing that really stood out for me on the outside looking in is how you mentor and encourage young entrepreneurs with this same approach too. Can you expand on that?
Sure. I'm finding that mentoring is coming easy because it's not a revolutionary idea, and it's not something that is talked about enough. because I think when the misconception is that a lot of startups lead to success. And, a 20-year-old getting out of college is looking at some of these bigger companies thinking, I just need to start a company and I'm going to be a millionaire, right? And I think the statistic is 90% of startups end up failing after a certain number of years. And you're really finding and hiring a boss when you go the VC-backed stage. So by me talking about my process in building a venture studio, what comes out of it is being a consultant is actually cool. Like you can create products and you can still be an entrepreneur, but what's more important is helping others and, making others all-stars. Ryan Holiday says, clearing the path for people above you and you will create a path for yourself. And he has this concept of like the canvas strategy. And so what I try to teach young entrepreneurs is you're in a company, work for a big company and find an opportunity in that big company to excel. And you don't have to worry about making yourself look good. You should really worry about making the company look good and finding the products that you can work on that excite you and get you energized. And then eventually move into the startup world. But being that consultant and being that person that's being humble and able to do work is very advantageous for your long-term career instead of like starting a company at the age of 20. So one of the scenarios that I give that kind of hits home for me is you, as an entrepreneur, let's say you're 20 years old, and I've said this to a few young kids. Let's say you have let's say you have two options to build a product, and the first one is let's put a product to it. Let's say you're trying to build like a dog toy, and you've come up with like the most interesting dog toy that you can think of. And one option is to say, great, I'm going to start a company around this dog toy. But you don't know how to do shipping or inventory or marketing or sales, right? You have to learn all of those, even though you might have the greatest dog toy that every dog loves. You haven't done dog testing. You haven't done a million dog testing. Maybe it only works with your dog, right? There's all these scenarios in which that idea and that product can fail. And so scenario 2 is, what if you joined a dog company and you said, hey, I just want to start working for you. And after a year, you introduced that dog company to your idea. And you gave it to them for free. And you said, it would be cool if I could work on this. I just want to be a part of seeing if this can work with other dogs. Well, that company is going to have the resources to test that toy with hundreds of dogs, different breeds, different types. They probably have a studio in which you can, run down to that studio in the afternoon and there's a bunch of dogs there and you can play with them and you can really see if that product works. And at the end of the day, you have 2 outcomes from scenario 2. Either the product is scrapped because no dogs like the toy, or the product's a hit and the company is going to be like, hey, this entrepreneur, this guy that came in, he has great ideas. Let's see if he can do it again. And so that scenario really tells like when I'm mentoring kids, I'm like, look, you can start a company, but there's a high chance you're going to fail and you're going to have to start from scratch and join a company. Or why not just join a company now and give your idea to them just to see if it's a good idea and a good process? You'll come up with many more in the future, but why take that risk? And again, it comes back to, if you're taking a lot of shots on net, you don't really have to fail. One of them will eventually hit.
Oh man, absolutely love that. And if we zoom out from that, essentially you guys help businesses grow with these innovative web and mobile technology solutions, and you've built over 50 applications and support millions of end users, including a unicorn, may I add as well. But are there any success stories you can share with us today? I appreciate you might not be able to name any names, but is there anything you can?
Yeah, the easiest ones to talk about are kind of the ones we've started because, we're proud of all of our clients. We really become partners with the products that we're building. And so a lot of them, yes, are confidential in the sense that we are the product studio behind their growth, but it's their success. They're the ideas, the marketing and sales behind it. But a story I can share today is, in 2020, right when COVID hit, we had a festival app that did not go well. And for obvious reasons, we were about to launch in March and we just said, I don't think this is going to work out for 2020. I don't think people are going to festivals. Yeah. But we started researching, what can we do with the team and what can we do for our next startup? And what came out of it is we were interested in building a product that we're going to help people through COVID. And we had this opportunity. There was a Zoom list of agencies that were signing up to build products and partner with Zoom. And Zoom had put out this list and they were just asking for people to help. And what came out of that list was people building yoga studios, event marketing apps, things for the business world to live online while they're at home. And what we saw and what we noticed is in our small New England town, you can drive 3 miles in one direction and you'll pass 2 to 3 churches of all different denominations. And we just said it was interesting that out of all of this, nobody was helping the churches from a Zoom standpoint, from a video conferencing standpoint. And we thought it would be great for us to try to figure out a way and a methodology to get churches online. And so just like I was telling you with our flywheel, one of the steps is finding an industry leader in running that company. And we had the incredible opportunity of finding Stephanie Leith to run Alter. And so we started this product in 2020. And like good entrepreneurs, Stephanie and I sat in a church every Sunday for 6 months. And we watched how they went online, how they broadcasted their sermon, what the service looked like, what did the soundboard do when it interacted with the church? How did Zoom work with that? For 6 months, every Sunday we were there. And, the product changed at those 6 months. I think Stephanie really took hold of becoming the CEO of that product and understanding what the market needed. And the more we got into this product, the more we started educating ourselves. We took that product from basically zero, and we're making, we have about 120 churches today. And those churches are running services. We have 1,800 churches have signed up and used our product. And that product itself is almost self-fulfilling, and it's, self-profitable. And it's creating an instance now in which we have successfully gone from 0 to 1. And now it's about marketing and selling to those churches to allow them to figure out a way to engage online. And I think what that product does so well is takes the concept of Zoom, like what a lot of people do for video conferencing, and encourages this aspect of engagement. It puts people in seats so that they can sit next to each other while they're watching the service. It gives them a place to meet afterwards around tables so that they can feel like they're interacting with people one-on-one. And I think most importantly, it gives a sense of community. And the more we can find these senses of community online, I think we're really tackling the right market so that we can create communities in the future around one of the greatest human communities that's ever existed, which is religion. And so coming at it from that aspect and having Stephanie think about, that the church communities every day is giving us this incredible opportunity to create a product from 0 to 1.
Wow, what a great story. And I love how the mindset there and turning that challenge into an opportunity almost. And now, of course, as the world opens back up and there's different sets of challenges, I'm curious, what would your biggest challenge be right now? Yeah,
as 2021, our challenge was sustainability. 2020, our challenge was growth. And we've accomplished both of those very well. I think as a studio, we are getting better as a company of being on the same page. And this year, we're focused on what's called EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Organizational System. That is going to allow us to advance as a whole company and be on the same page. But the studio itself, one of the issues we're finding this year is our story. We believe that we're exceptional at building products, and we create products that are reliable and beautifully designed. But so does every agency. They put that on their website. And when you talk to them, they're struggling, right? They're not executing on the products that they're trying to put out to the world. And not all of them, some of them are, just as successful, but the ones that are still putting the same messaging on the websites are not differentiating themselves from a new client coming to that site. And I think our challenge is proving that we can isolate our best attribute as an organization and explain to clients that we are their solution. And we really want people to start seeking us out when they have a problem and being in that place so that they know they have a problem. They know they need an app. They know they want something to go from good to great. Mm-hmm. And they're finding us. If we can achieve this, we're going to find this place in the market where opportunities really come to seek us out. And Naval says that there's like this 4th level of luck that he talks about where, the casino is like level 1 and, you can hustle to get level 2. But the 4th level is when you become so good at what you do, you just become an expert that luck finds you. And it's the challenge. It's the hardest kind. It's the most challenging kind because you need to match your story with your website, with the reality. And all 3 of those need to be aligned. And so our goal in 2022 is really to find that messaging, understand who we are as a company, what we're trying to solve, and really be crystal clear about our solutions and our offerings when clients find us online.
And I am conscious we'll have startup founders listening all over the world at various stages of their startup journey. And as you're someone that's excelled at bootstrapping startups without the involvement of venture capital, can you tell me a bit more about what you've learned from your bootstrapping days and why you're so passionate about taking that route?
Yeah. I mean, sales and marketing, that's a lesson. We, as a product studio, we've, like I said, I think if you count the startups of ones that we started from zero, or have equity in, we're about at number 12. And the first 4, we had 100% equity in. We had an awesome product. No one else was building that product. It was phenomenal. Like, we thought worlds of success and cash would rain down on us. But we did not sell or market or do any of that. And it failed and it fizzled out, right? So I think the lesson is, and you look across the industry, I mean, you can look at Build Sell 30 that's going on right now. Any individual that's at the micro conferences, indie hackers, and you read about them, they're getting 5K, 10K, monthly recurring revenue. And what are they doing? They're advertising themselves online. They're marketing online every day. They're focused on the website and the sale and how many clicks it takes to get to the aha moment. All of those focusing away from the product and into the marketing allows them to be successful. And I think, from a product studio standpoint, we have to understand the psychology of the users way better and take a product from 0 to 1 in 1 month or 2 months rather than, 6 months or a year. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to work, but it has to understand that we're going to reach that product market fit. And so just the lesson that we've learned out of these startups is, think of a product, figure out how you're going to sell it, figure out how you're going to market it, then figure out how you're going to build it. And the more we do that, I think the better our startups, our 15th or 16th startup are going to become.
100% with you on that. And so much has changed, hasn't it, over the last 2 years, from video conferencing entering the mainstream, where 2 years ago everyone tried to avoid it. Now even grandparents are using it, and we've gone from remote working at scale to hybrid working, and now we're talking about the metaverse and augmented reality headsets by all of the big tech companies out there. But I'm curious, what is it that excites you about the role that technology is going to play in that future in the next 2 years or more?
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth. I'm excited for the next wearable, right? There's going to be something, whether it's VR or AR, there's going to be something that comes out that solves the problem of replacing the mobile phone. But I'm not convinced that VR is the solution. I've been studying a little bit of the 3D technology that went into televisions, and I'm finding that we were thinking that was the revolution that was going to change viewing. And it didn't fail because of price, even though it was high. I think it failed because people didn't want to sit around on couches with a family or friends wearing glasses. Finding that piece of hardware to put on your body to experience something, I think, is very difficult. And I'm not positive that VR can overcome that, right? It's almost like you need the headset to experience the VR. And we're almost repeating the 3D craze that happened in 2012. And it's crazy. That craze, it went from 2012 of like 40 million in sales to every single TV manufacturer not selling a single 3D television 2 years later. And that's a fascinating decline of a technology that basically took over CES, in 2012, 2013. So repeating that, I think, is dangerous, or not dangerous, dangerous for the people trying to replace with VR. But what I'm interested in is this thing called spatial reality displays. And it's a concept where the better we get at eye tracking, we have this ability to create a 3-dimensional space from 2 objects, from 2 independent 2D objects. And it works the same as 3D televisions. And it actually works the same as your human eyes. Your brain is what creates that 3D image from 2 flat images, and it crosses over at a focal point, making you see depth. And so what spatial reality displays do is on a screen itself, it modifies the lenses, almost like a hologram on the lenses itself, on the glass, and it takes the light and bends it to one eye while it bends different light to the other eye. And as you move looking at that screen, it's tracking your eyes so that the LEDs that are behind can adjust accordingly to continue to make that 3D image in space, almost as if you can touch it. So that's Sony now has a commercial product out, and that technology to me seems more realistic that you can sit down in front of your screen. You don't need to put anything on. You just start looking. And if you're talking to somebody on Zoom, that head, that shape, that person can be experienced in front of you in 3D. And what really gets exciting about that is if you do 2 or 3 eye tracking systems, you can have an experience where multiple people are looking at the same screen in the same 3D image. And I think VR has its limitations, but that concept of creating 3D from 2-dimensional planes is where I'm really getting excited for the future.
Man, as I was listening to you describe that there, I felt like Keanu Reeves in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I just wanted to go, whoa.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's a consumer product too. Like this idea, you always see them on paper, but this thing exists, and people that they created the new Ghostbusters movie, and they were using this technology. So it's a thing. It's there.
Oh, man, I'm going to be checking that out at the end of our conversation. And we began the podcast today talking about your origin story. So as we come full circle now, I'm going to ask if there was a song, piece of music, movie or book that has inspired you or accompanied you or helped you in your career. Is there a choice and a story that you can leave our listeners with today and leave on an inspirational note, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So when I was a teenager, I discovered Dave Matthews, and he's basically been the soundtrack of my life since then. I've listened to every album that they've ever put out. And when you follow somebody like that, especially somebody that goes through his evolution in his life, and he's a songwriter, a lot of his songs now are about his kids. So I've continued to find inspiration and relevance to his songs compared to my life at the same time, which has been super interesting. But I know you have a playlist and you put songs on the playlist. I was actually jamming out to that this morning. But I'll give you 3 songs to kind of add to that playlist that, awesome. There's the radio songs from Dave Matthews. But there's Dreaming Tree, which is kind of an unknown one, which is a good little inspirational song about childhood. Pig, it's Pig. And that's a great song. It's just a beautiful song from beginning to end. And You Might Die Trying. I figured I'd put that one in there for the entrepreneurs about hustling. So as far as books, some of the most inspirational books that I've read, for my career has been The Goal by Goldratt and The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Goldratt basically taught me, how to think about a business properly. And Charles Duhigg has really shaped my habits, both good and bad. And I think, the inspiration that has come from The Goal has allowed me to understand how to build that business, how to create a process around the business itself. And really how to conceptualize the procedures that are needed to run a business.
Awesome. Well, I'll add the songs to the Spotify playlist and the books to our Amazon wish list. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more information about anything we talked about today and more information about 923 Digital Ventures or contact your team, what's the best starting point?
Sure. So you can find us on LinkedIn at Andrew Amen, or you can follow us at 923digital.co. And that's spelt out. So NINETWOTHRE. And what we do as a company is build mobile apps and web apps. So you can also find us, on Dribbble and Behance and things like that to see our portfolio. But the best way to follow me is definitely on Twitter. That's where I'm picking up my phone and checking for messages and following some of the people that inspire me. And my handle is at Andrew Amen.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here today. Love chatting with you about how you navigated the startup world by building a digital venture studio versus that traditionally backed VC model startup, and also about mentoring and encouraging young entrepreneurs with your approach too. And we didn't even get to talk about you achieving the top 500 ranking on the Inc. 5000 list last year. So I think we'll have to get you back on in the future. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to share your story and leaving us with 2 books and 3 cracking tunes too.
Thank you, Neil. I really appreciate it. And, your podcast is great. It gives a lot of inspiration and you've had a lot of great people on it. So I appreciate what you do. And thank you for having me on.
What an incredibly cool guy. And I will post a few links on how he provides guidance to fellow entrepreneurs with this new approach that he's mentioned there. And hopefully other people listening can replicate and innovate with this playbook that he uses. So I'll put a few links on that over on my website at techblogwriter.co.uk. Go to podcasts, you should see today's episode and you'll find the information there. But as always, if you've got any stories to share, questions for me, or you'd like to work with me, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Send me a DM on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And just like that, we've reached the end of another episode. But have no fear, I've got a long line of guests for you all with some great examples of how tech is transforming industries, as well as a few actionable tips on how to take advantage of emerging technologies and overcome any challenges you might be facing. So what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.